Carol, thank you for coming in this morning. Thank you for joining us on Brownsville Matters. Great to have you.
I'm honored. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I wanted to talk first about the history of art and the art scene in Brownsville, because you've been here a while.
Oh, yes.
and as I understand it, you used to be a big part of the the Art League that had the house?
Yes, the Neal House and the gazebo and the other things over there.
It was over behind TSC on the Resaca, right?
Yes, it's the second oldest house. The Neal House is the second oldest house in Brownsville.
Was it moved there or was it built there?
I believe it was moved there. I knew once, but I don't remember now.
I think that the very first time I came to Brownsville in 1988 and I joined the faculty at TSC, the very first faculty meeting for the year was held over there in a building that was right by that house.
Yes,
right?
The Annex.
Yeah,
I
the
think
Annex.
it was called the Annex.
Yeah. So how did the Art League get possession of that home, and what did you do there?
We had wonderful classes. We had wonderful artists. We had both men and ladies that were just core to the Brownsville Art Society. They were determined. It was fantastic, and they formed the league, and they had some volunteers and they had some employees, and throughout the years they implemented a lot of shows, like the International Art Show started with them. They had an annual show for members. They have some fabulous art stored. Anyway, so I just joined them. I'm kind of a nonprofit junkie and have worked for several nonprofits and enjoy it immensely. And so I joined them because I am an artist and I was interested in what they were trying to do. And that group of people did it. They were great.
Did you have people from both sides of the river then? Did you people
Oh, yes.
from Matamoros as well as Brownsville?
Oh, yes, definitely. We had our group, in fact, Mongrel, the famous artist Mongrel, taught there.
Oh.
And he's from Mexico.
And did you have classes there where you taught art regularly?
Yes, yes.
So someone
and
was...
everybody kind of took turns, and occasionally if there was an artist from another place visiting the valley, they would pull him in and have a workshop. It was a really working model.
You would have, for instance, Winter Texans, I suppose, that would come in and take art. It would be oil and watercolor and all sorts of media.
Everything. Pottery.
Sculpture, it's pottery.
We had a kiln. We had something going all the time.
Did Nancy Slight work with you guys?
Nancy Slight is a wonderful artist, a dear friend, and she helped us on projects. But as far as working full time, no.
Yeah, I remember she had a kiln over at Texas Southwest College, and then she eventually moved to San Miguel, where she was making a living with selling her pottery and she did sculpture and pottery, and I don't know if she did painting or not.
Not that I'm aware. Just I'm familiar with her sculpture. Just wonderful.
I just remember studying her hands sometimes, how they were so strong, from all that work. It's interesting how artisans have great hands. Carpenters, or anybody who works with their hands a lot have strong, well-developed, admirable hands. I think. In fact, it reminds me of a priest I once knew that told me that he would often do eulogies for people that were working men. That he said they didn't have. He said if a banker died, I could get their resume. He said, but these were not people who had resumes. Their resumes were in their bodies, in a sense, from the work they had done. And I remember he told me that he once did a eulogy for a man who had been a carpenter all his life, and he talked about his hands and connected it to Jesus and carpentry and all that. It was a beautiful metaphor that he tied through for that. So so anyway, you taught. You had sculpture that was taught there, and pottery, and you had
Oil,
painting and
watercolor.
oils, and you're an artist yourself.
Yes, I'm an artist.
And are you oil or watercolor or both?
Watercolor and acrylic mainly. I do some pen and ink, some illustration, but mainly acrylic over the past few years. The dioramas at the zoo that are in the background, probably 40 of them in the reptile house, I did those with acrylic.
Wow, I
and
didn't.
To do that, you have to actually get in the cage and sit in there and paint till you get out.
So did you do the lions?
Not yet. I'm leaving them for last, literally.
Well, I didn't know that. I'm gonna have to look when I go there. I think that I was thinking of the great work that was done back in I guess it was during roughly the Depression era, where they put artists to work painting murals in post offices, like Tom Lee.
Oh yeah.
Jerry Bywater, I think was his name. Jerry Bywater did some great ones. And so you're doing something similar by painting the background and these. That's great.
Yeah.
And are you the only one who's done them?
Oh no, James Stevenson. Different people have done them. I've done interpretive panels for Texas Parks and Wildlife to display the birds that come into the zoo, and things like that. So educational dioramas and graphics.
What has become of the Art League?
Well, it went on to be the Brownsville Museum of Fine Art, and that is now probably about 14 years ago that took place.
So this building that we have over by the zoo,
Yes.
this large building,
Yes.
was created essentially by the Brownsville Art League. It grew into that.
It grew into that, and a lot of people across a lot of places.
Well, it's wonderful that you have it there, because now you'd be right up against the border fence if you still had your old place, right? Plus, you're back in a pocket there, which I guess was good in some ways, because you could paint the resaca and the wild birds and parrots coming across. But you're by the zoo, and that's a nice kind of central casting sort of for Brownsville. There were the zoo and the theater, all the arts together. That's nice.
That's great.
What is the plan for that area? Is there a long-term vision for what else would be developed there?
I know the MIDI Cultural Foundation is working very hard to develop that intersection. I went on and did different things and haven't been associated with the museum for quite a while. So, but I know they're having great artists come and giving shows and things like this.
Well, it's also wonderful for local artists, because I know that they've had photography exhibits as well as painting. What has impressed you that's gone on there?
Well, I know Gabriel Trevino is going to be displayed there, and that's impressing me a lot.
Our Gabriel, right here?
Right here, this man right here. I don't know why he's not home painting. He should be getting ready for a show.
So audio expert and visual expert.
Yes.
Yeah.
Audio visual man.
So what are you going to have, Gabriel? We can hear you. Go ahead. Okay. I'll interview you later.
They're going to be great.
They're going to be. And what is it that you like to do most? What do you like to paint? What is just for you? Do you have any particular thing?
I'm pretty hyper and have attention deficit disorder and all those bad things. And so I'll jump from children's book illustrations to a serious educational interpretive, just jumping around constantly. So, but it is never boring. I never get tired. I've been painting since I was 3. So I know my mom had records of that. So it's just, I've got to do, I can't not do it. I think most artists are like me, and they can't not
do
paint.
it. Yeah. Well, what is the first thing you ever painted that you can remember? When you were a child, what were you drawing or painting or sketching?
Probably frogs, and I still do a lot of frogs.
Do you?
Yeah, frogs and toads. I don't know, it's an amphibian thing.
Horny toads too?
Oh, yeah. In fact, one of the things, I'm with this little nonprofit called Wildlife Conservation and Education Society of South Texas. And one of the things I do for that is put together, coloring books and things. And I did one on our native animals here that's free and downloadable for our kids to learn about horny toads.
Well, where do they get this?
From Wildlife Conservation. If they get in touch with Puente at Puente's Art Studio downtown, they can get on a list and I'll email it to them.
Okay, great.
I'd love to. I'm trying to get it out there because it has roadrunners and the good
Chacalacas.
stuff. Oh, yeah.
And horny toads, which are making a bit of a comeback. Not so much here, but in areas where there's not so much development, around Freer and to the west of Three Rivers and to the east and some of those areas. I understand that but you kind of have to be where people are not for them. The insecticides had a lot to do with knocking them out, and then the red ants.
Their favorite food source.
Yeah, their favorite food source and that. Because I remember, I'm sure as you remember, you grew up in Combs? Comera. And that's halfway between
Combs and Primera. I went to church in Combs and I went to school in Primera.
That's 4 miles between them?
Yes.
Something like that, yeah. And what was special about that world when you were growing up?
There were horny toads
There were
at
horny
the
toads.
schoolyard.
Yeah.
I should say horned lizards. We're going to get a call.
You ever step on one barefoot?
No.
No. I told my kids that stepping on a Lego is nothing compared to stepping on a horny toad barefoot. You're not a real kid until you've done that, right?
That's the message I'm trying to get across.
So when you grew up there, how were you there until you went to high school or beyond?
Yes, yeah.
And how many people were in your high school?
I don't know, 700, something like that.
How many?
I stayed home and painted.
Oh, okay.
Don't tell anybody.
But your graduating class, I would think it would be pretty small, like maybe 200 people at most. You don't know. It just wasn't very big.
I wasn't there.
You didn't get best attendance, I take it.
True.
That's right.
That's true.
All right, after you finished high school, then what?
Well, dear friend Tony Bennett, the bird artist, I met him and I saw one of his pieces in a shop in Harlingen. And I thought, who is this great artist? And then I accidentally met him and he helped me for years. Questions about watercolor and acrylic and painting in general.
Well, one of the things I like to ask a lot of people that come in who've had a lot of experience in Brownsville, and I used to say that our philanthropy here is kind of narrow and shallow, whereas philanthropy in Houston is broad and it's deep. There's big money and a lot of people have it, and so it's easier to build great artistic communities and find support for these things. And so this has been a struggle in Brownsville, obviously, for all the time that you've been doing this. So I like to throw this out. If you had, say, a grant of $40 million to do what you want with, what would you do with that to strengthen the artistic community here?
I would implement a lot more classes in the schools to the youth. If we start there, it would be great. That would be my main focus.
And you don't have to, have art as a career to appreciate and benefit from artistic endeavors, right? I mean, there are people
the best
who are...
part about art, I think, is learning to look. Because when you start observing things that you're going to record with a pencil or a pen, you really see it. And then once you see that, things just start popping and you start seeing lots of things. Your vision changes tremendously and it changes your life. So I think art is a good name for it, but I think the ultimate reward is learning to look.
What classic artists do you enjoy the most, or particularly inspiration for you?
Hieronymus Bosch. He was the gentleman that was a surrealist. That it was wonderful. Just who knows where his brain was? It was just unreal. But what a trip to follow.
But is he part of like Salvador Dali's group? You
Way
might say
before, way before.
Okay.
And I know you spent a lot of time in Mexico. Have you been to Los Pozos?
No.
Oh, that's where this artist and Leonora Carrington, the artist, they kind of established an art colony down there. And it's all surrealistic. It looks like Salvador Daliville.
Wow.
But
Where is it? What's it close
I'm trying to
to?
say Wahila? I don't know, but look up Los Pozos on the internet.
Okay.
And it's not far from us, and it's just a jungle of surrealism. Incredible.
I'll have to look it up. I know, of course, San Miguel, which is San Miguel de Allende is an old art community there, and then Guanajuato also. Guadalajara has a pretty strong classic art community in terms of Mexican culture and style. I've been to Frida Kahlo's museum in Mexico City, of course, but I'll have to look into that. I haven't heard of it. I'm sure I'll love it.
Fascinating, fascinating. Everybody should look that up.
Some years ago, I went to about 5 years ago, really. I went to Madrid, and I was looking for, whenever I travel, I like to buy a painting if I can, and I can't buy those $5,000 paintings, but I'll do 600 or 700 to have something that's what's the word I'm looking for?
Memorable.
Something that's memorable and one of a kind. And I don't want a print. I don't want a poster. So I want something that's from the artists themselves. And anyway, I found one there that I liked, and I brought it back. But I remember that there were two by the same artist. And the one I bought is more of your classic oil that's flat. I like to say, I'm saying it's flat because the other one that I didn't buy had a kind of a third dimension to it because it was raised up a bit, and it had the waves of the ocean and it had a thickness to it, right? It's kind of a new style, I think, for that time. I'm not sure, but I hadn't seen it before, and I was trying to decide. And I like what I have, but that other one has always kind of tugged at me. I said, man, I should have bought that other one. That was I was trying to decide between the two. The price about the same, and I thought, well, that's kind of looking like it's a new art form that they're playing around with. So I'm not sure it'll be likable later on. But anyway, it's the nice thing about art is people are always playing.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And but the surrealistic art. That had its movement, is it still strong, or is that seen as 100 years ago and it's not so popular now?
I don't know. They're in the 70s. I don't know if you're familiar with the Frame House Gallery. It was a group of artists, Guy Koliak, mainly wild animal artists, realists, fantastic, and they developed a system of the limited edition prints. They didn't develop, but they really capitalized on it. And that became popular at that time. And so that was a huge wave that went through, just an enormous wave for several years. And now that's kind of died out and it's going to different things. So it's definitely trending. I mean, whatever.
Yeah, what is trending now? What is the art movement that's hot?
At my age, I don't know. But I see a lot of manga or something. I don't know what that is. But
I like the paintings that have a lot of lacy shade in them.
Oh.
I don't. Well, actually, here's something: is when I was looking at a art gallery online the other day, and I was seeing a lot of paintings that were kind of European, Spanish, French, whatever, but and they all had a similar sort of landscape, inner city scenes, etc., cafe scenes. They're so popular. And I thought, what I would like is there's one that has a lot of lacy shade on a patio, and I thought it would be nice to have that for where we are, and I'm sure it exists, but the lacy shade of a mesquite tree, or something that's our world instead of a world that's far away and different.
It's interesting you mentioned shade, because shading is such an important part of painting. And without shading and highlighting and those things, that's the first thing I talk about in a class. People, it's a cartoon. Your vision is a cartoon without shading and highlighting. And so it's very important.
Well, what are some of the rules that you try to, when you've taught a long time, what are some of the principles that you try to drive home early on for the young artist?
It's okay to mess up a whole lot and do it over and over and over, and someday you will be very pleased. Art's not intimidating. A lot of people are intimidated by watercolors and everything like that. But then there's urban sketchers that go out there and paint buildings from their car seats, and those paintings are wonderful. But so, people don't need to be intimidated by art supplies.
So you want them to learn to be playful.
Yes, exactly.
Just play.
It'll improve their art.
Yeah, I think it's true of all art forms. If you kind of build in the natural, limits, you kind of a fear of play, then you'll never be reaching your truest potential, I suppose, in any art form.
I agree completely.
Yeah, I remember in my own case when I remember this very clearly. I was in the second grade, and I was doing a drawing of an eagle. And I had practiced, getting the head of the eagle, getting the eye just right, and getting the beak properly curved and all that. And I had what I thought was a little masterpiece with just pencil and paper. I had sketched out the eagle, just the head, and my teacher came up and looked at it, and she said, "Son, I don't think that you're cut out to be an artist."
That's a death penalty right there. Right? That's a death penalty for that person.
I remember I can't think of a time in my educational life that I was more devastated by one comment, because I thought that it was great. And then she took me from here to here. Yeah. And teachers don't realize the kind of power they have sometimes. And of course, sometimes that story that I just told becomes the genesis of the great artist who said, "I will show her." But for me, I didn't have that. I just said, "Okay,
I'm back
to baseball for me. I'll give up on this stuff."
Well, it's her loss.
So, yeah. But at the same time, I've always had an enormous appreciation for great art, and now that I'm older, I think even more so. I think maybe as you get older, a lot of older people get into gardening because I think they love the aesthetics of it, and just appreciate beauty in a new way. The older you get, I believe, and I think same thing for art. You appreciate the aesthetics, the subtleties, the capturing of natural beauty in a way that you can't get it any other way.
We're becoming kinder, gentler people.
I think so. Yeah.
I hope so.
That's why I like how a lot of parents will tell their kids, say, "Grandma wasn't like that when she was my mom, that's not the same woman there,
And that happens.
So we get kinder and gentler, and we get less disturbed by things. We just say, "No, it's not the end of the world. We'll get past this.
It's not worth the cookies."
Have you done large-scale murals?
Yes. Yeah. I did one that was, my husband and I did one in Belize at an ecotourist center that was 110 feet long.
Wow.
Outside on the side of a river. And it was all jungle scenes. And we had 11 days. So
I've always wondered, when I see a mural, I always say, how do you do that? How do you get it in large scale with the proportions right? Do do you just divide it into sections and you say, we're going to do this here on this part? I mean, how do you do it?
Well, there's usually no plan. And you run out there with all your paints and look at an empty spot and say, what would go here? And that's how it starts.
But how do you erase it? If
You don't. What happened to this mural, and I have them at Palo Alto and different places, but what happened at this mural is the river flooded. And when I went back to check on the mural later, there were fish swimming by my butterflies that were up in the air previously. I don't know what's happened since.
But if you, when I'm talking in the process of painting it, if you say, that's not right, oh my God, that's not right, do you just paint over it and start again?
Yes, I do that a whole lot.
Yes?
Yes, a whole lot.
So you paint a white background and start again, or does it matter?
Oh, no, I just start painting on top.
On top of that.
Acrylic is very forgiving, and it's basically a plastic. You're just applying wet layers of plastic. And some of the work I've had outside has been there for 25 years, and it's not faded. So it's a miracle material. And anyway, so that's what I use when I paint murals.
Well, there's been a good deal of talk about painting more murals downtown to enliven it. Are you in favor of that?
Oh, sure.
Yeah?
Sure.
And if you go into some towns, it's always a difference of opinion. A lot of people see a lot of when they see lots of murals in a city, they'll say, "Oh no, that's tacky. That looks bad. It's not, it looks ghetto or whatever." And but if done well, it can be very classy and cool and a compliment to the culture. And so
I like that kind.
You like that kind. You like that kind. Well, I suppose it all has to be coordinated so that there's a continuity. You're not just leaping from one style to another, I would guess.
Well, I would hope so, because otherwise you would get a mess, wouldn't you?
You'd get a mess, right? Yeah. So what would be your thoughts on that? If we were to have more murals downtown, what kinds of murals would you think we should have?
I love our history, and if there's any way we can portray our history, whether it's old architecture or something like that, I think that's very valuable.
I have been impressed with what's happened downtown. It's been a long, slow slog, so to speak, but little by little, thanks to Larry Loff and others like him, we've gotten, quite a nice renovation of many old structures.
Oh, yes.
In fact, I was downtown the other night, and I was quite shocked, really, to see all the nice restaurants and bars and nightlife. And, I guess I'm late to the party, so to speak, but there's a lot going on there.
A lot went on during COVID.
With COVID, yeah.
People were working behind the scenes, and I want to point out that Puente's Art Studio is downtown on Elizabeth.
On Elizabeth, okay.
And that's where my work is showing now.
Okay. When is it open? What time?
10 to 1, Monday through Friday.
Wednesday, Friday, okay. And so, is that all your work, or just you have other galleries where you show?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm in other places.
Are there places here in Brownsville, in many cities, where you go to a nice restaurant, there will be artwork for sale?
I was in Gazpacho's the other day, and they have a very large collection of artwork. I don't know if it's for sale, but they have. Gio's has a lot of artwork. Different places.
That's right. I've been in Gazpacho's, and I've seen a few, and I've said, I'd like that. Yeah. I never asked if it was for sale or not. It does remind me when I was down in Puebla, Mexico. I was in a little cantina bar, and they would have a music night there where they'd have these people come in. They're just local soloists, you might say, just come in, play the guitar and sing, and they were wonderful. But behind them was a huge painting, and it was a painting of a guitarist. And it was done in the style of that. I asked the owner if he would sell it, and he said no. He said that's my ambiente. I said, where am I going to get that? And He said you could offer me $10,000 and I wouldn't take it because it makes the place, you know.
How great!
He said it makes the beautiful background, and I could never get something as good. And so I appreciated that, and I said, what about 20,000? He said, well, we might
We'll
talk. And I said, well, I couldn't even do 10, so I was just hoping you might be willing to part with it. And so that would be good. Well, it's nice to know that things are moving in the right direction, and I'm happy to know where I can see your art. I want to go see it.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming in. Appreciate you
My
coming
pleasure.
in this day.